evening. You're joining us here on our rolling coverage of the West Asia conflict, day 4, and it's showing no signs of dying down. You had the US President Donald Trump suggesting that this conflict could go on, this war could go on for the next 4 to 5 weeks. How long will this war continue? We're going to be focusing on that. But we'll begin with an exclusive conversation. Joining me on this broadcast is the Israeli Defense Forces Deputy Spokesperson, Lieutenant Ben Cohen. Lieutenant Cohen, thank you very much for your time. The question I'll begin with to you is about what I referred to, US President Donald Trump suggesting that this war could go on for 4 to 5 weeks. There are some assessments that also suggest that this could be a long-drawn war, a never-ending war of sorts. What do you think, Lieutenant Cohen?
Thank you for having me. So the IDF opened on Saturday morning in Operation Roaring Lion, a joint operation with the U.S. Armed Forces intended to eliminate an existential threat on the state of Israel, on the United States, and on the world at large, and that is the Iranian terrorist regime, including its ballistic missiles program, its advancement towards achieving a nuclear bomb, and its proxies all across the Middle East. And we will continue to operate for as long as we need in order to eliminate that existential threat. I won't give any specific time frame to anyone on the other side, but I will tell you specifically, we are ready for as long as we need to achieve that goal.
What about the fact that, you're seeing the theater of war expanding? And in that sense, Iran, attacking several other countries, attacking US bases in those countries. You are saying you cannot give us a specific timeline because it's all about, achieving your mission, reaching your goal ultimately. But there is that aspect of the fact that many other countries are also now getting involved in this conflict.
So I think if anyone had a shadow of a doubt that the Iranian terrorist regime was a threat to a lot more than just the United States and Israel, then they've seen that first and foremost over the last 4 days. They've fired hundreds of ballistic missiles, a lot of them at countries in the Middle East that are not Israel. They're a threat to the entire region, and that's precisely one of the reasons that we need to eliminate that existential threat. We can't allow for them to sit with hundreds of ballistic missiles. We can't allow for them to sit with their extremist agenda.
Lieutenant Cohen, the argument that will be put forth by Iranians is that this was retaliatory, that there was an unprovoked attack on them, and so they're merely responding to the attack, the strikes that happened in their soil.
So I think that the key difference here, main difference between the IDF and the U.S. Armed Forces and between the Iranian terrorist regime is that we are carrying out a military operation against military targets to eliminate an existential threat. In stark contrast, the Iranian terrorist regime is not responding. They're targeting civilians. They're targeting civilians. It's their goal. It's not just a message. We have concrete intelligence that says that they are trying to target civilians in Israel and all across the Middle East. They want to kill civilians to create panic, to create stress. That doesn't sound like a response to me.
What's the evidence of that, Lieutenant Cohen? You're saying that there is concrete proof of the same. Iran says we're targeting US bases in these countries.
So I can tell you, we have seen concrete intelligence behind the scenes. I can't share it with you out of security classification interests, but I can tell you that I've seen with my eyes real intelligence that points to the fact that this is their strategy. They want to kill civilians. And it's proved a few days ago when a missile hits Bet Shemesh and kills 9 civilians in a synagogue, including brothers. That doesn't sound to me like a military target.
Okay. There was also the incident, of course, in the school, though there was a statement that suggested it was a misfire of what happened in Iran. Lieutenant Cohen, you say that this is an ongoing operation. What's the end game here? What's the ultimate goal? Is it a regime change in Iran? And in which case, is that something that you're even close to right now?
So the IDF's goal is to eliminate that threat that includes the ballistic missile program, that the Iranian regime set out a goal to build 8,000 missiles, 8,000 ballistic missiles by 2027. We can't allow for them to have them, to prevent them from achieving a nuclear bomb, and to prevent them from activating their proxy network as they have over recent days with Hezbollah joining. That's our goal. It's a military objective to prevent that threat from being. We can't live with that threat existing.
So nothing to do with the regime change then? That's not the ultimate goal of your mission?
As I stated, our goal is to eliminate that existential threat.
All right, Lieutenant Ben Cohen, thank you very much for your time, for joining us here on India Today. So you've got there the deputy spokesperson of the Israeli Defense Forces stating very clearly that this is an ongoing operation, refusing to specify an exact timeline, saying that it will take as long as it does to eliminate an existential threat, as they put it. Just a quick update coming in, though. Prime Minister Modi has again dialed several leaders in the Gulf region, speaking this time to two important leaders from the Gulf. Prime Minister Modi has spoken with the Sultan of Oman. He's also had a conversation with the Crown Prince of Kuwait. Geeta, you want to give us more details on this?
Well, this comes at a time when the two countries have been hit by Iran, and there are a massive number of Indians who live in these countries. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi not only speaking to them and expressing concern about the situation on the ground, but also he spoke about the Indians residing in these countries and the safety concerns that India has with regards to Indian safety in the countries.
Pranay, we've seen several such conversations in the last few days. There have been questions, however, of how we're tackling this particular issue diplomatically and what our stand really is on the conflict.
As far as this conflict is concerned, Akshita, if you see the statement put out by the Ministry of External Affairs on this issue, when Israel and United States launched this operation, India said that we have our concern about the violation of territorial integrity and sovereignty of Iran. But having said that, we have our own concerns regarding our national security, the interest of our people, and also about our energy security. And if you see, you mentioned about that, Prime Minister Narendra Modi dialed up to many head of states and head of governments in Gulf region. Obviously, we have a concern about our people. Over 95 lakh Indians are there in that region. We have our own concern about their safety. We have our own concern about the energy security, energy supply. That's why if you see, Prime Minister Modi spoke to MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, in Saudi Arabia. Prime Minister Modi spoke to MBZ, Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan in UAE. Prime Minister Modi spoke to King of Jordan. Prime Minister Modi spoke to Sultan of Oman. And Prime Minister Modi spoke to Sheikh of Kuwait. This clearly shows that we have our own primary concern regarding the safety and security and well-being of Indians residing in the region. As far as this conflict is concerned, we have said how we are looking at this conflict from the Indian perspective, that we have our concern about the violation of national the territorial integrity and sovereignty. But besides that and beyond that, we do not want to get into this conflict, and I think that is the point of India, because we have urged both parties to resolve, and this is the stated position of India, that only dialogue and diplomacy is the way forward.
On the side of peace, essentially.
Absolutely.
That's the message that's coming from India repeatedly on this conflict as well. I will also highlight that there's been a lot of domestic politics, or the fact that there's been no statement on the killing of Khamenei. But about what's really happening in this war. Day 4 of the Middle East conflict. And the signs are ominous. What began as a fierce exchange is now threatening to also spiral into a full-blown, maybe a long-drawn war. You had Donald Trump yesterday suggesting that this war could go on for 4 to 5 weeks. Some question whether it will be limited to just 4 to 5 weeks or will be endless. Take, for example, the Russia-Ukraine war, which has gone on for years. Let's get you all of those reactions first, and then we'll decode that with my colleagues.
US and Israel continue to bomb key Iranian targets. It seems like the US and West Asia are currently embarking on yet another forever war like Russia and Ukraine. US B-1 bombers struck deep inside Iran to degrade Iranian ballistic missile capabilities. US said it will destroy Iranian nuclear stockpile and raise the missile industry to the ground. US forces said that they are now hitting Iran surgically, overwhelmingly and unapologetically. US forces also hit Iranian warship deployed in Gulf of Oman and said that they will continue to defend their assets. The Israeli Air Force eliminated soldiers from the defense array of Iran, and now the war is only expanding. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu approved Israeli defense forces to advance and seize additional controlling areas in Lebanon to prevent firing on Israeli border settlements. Israeli forces have warned Hezbollah of a heavy price. Israeli forces have been given a free hand to advance and seize additional controlling areas in Lebanon and to defend border settlements from there. Lebanon, meanwhile, has evacuated advanced positions. But despite the widening war theaters, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that US and Israel's war against Iran will not be an endless one and that it will involve quick and decisive action.
I hear the people are saying, we're going to have an endless war here. You're not going to have an endless war. Now, of course, it's up to the people of Iran in the final count to change the government. But we are creating, America and Israel together are creating the conditions for them to do so. And I think peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia would be really possible and probably very close.
Substantially ahead of our
US President Trump, meanwhile, said that US boots would be on the ground only if necessary.
We have the strongest and most powerful by far military in the world, and we will easily prevail. We're already substantially ahead of our time projections, but whatever the time is, it's okay. We have capability to go far longer than that. We'll do it. Whatever somebody said today, they said, oh, well, if the president wants to do it really quickly. After that, he'll get bored. I don't get bored. There's nothing boring about this.
US State Secretary Marco Rubio has said that the hardest is yet to come.
Hardest hits are yet to come from the U.S. military. The next phase will be even more punishing on Iran than it is right now. Someone was screaming, how long will it take? I don't know how long it'll take. We have objectives. We will do this as long as it takes to achieve those objectives, and we will achieve those objectives. The world will be a safer place when we're done with this operation.
The conflict has widened beyond direct US-Iran exchanges into a border crisis in West Asia crisis involving proxies, Gulf states, and energy infrastructure threats. With no indications of a ceasefire or resolution, is West Asia heading towards a Russia-Ukraine-like prolonged war? Bureau Report, India Today.
Is this going to be a war that now goes on for the next many years? The new normal, essentially, like the Russia-Ukraine war has become, or as Trump says, it'll end in the next few weeks, or will it wrap up in a few days? Will we see some sort of talk, some sort of middle ground being reached? Sandeep, I'll begin with you. What do you think? The US president says 4 to 5 weeks. Do you think it'll go on for that long?
Well, the rhetoric emerging right now, Akshita, is that we're going to fight this war for as long as it takes. And my sense is that they got into this war thinking that it would be a very swift operation, it would be a decapitation strike, it would be a leadership change. None of that seems to have played to plan, because Ayatollah Khamenei died in the first 24 hours of that operation. It was decapitation strike. But the Iranians seem to have something else in their minds when they launched over 1,000 projectiles a day, and they've been relentlessly targeting the GCC countries, the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, and of course they've expanded the arena of conflict from Cyprus to Oman, over 3,000 kilometers. Yeah. All this wasn't part of the original plan. They thought they would be able to confine the operations to Iran. They would bring so much of pressure on Iran, and Iran would hopefully fold up. That hasn't played to plan yet. Iran has, in fact, expanded the theater of operations, dragged in more countries, and it has now begun a very dangerous phase, which is targeting commercial interests, targeting oil supplies and the Straits of Hormuz.
So are you suggesting essentially that Iran won't be ready to have any sort of conversation right now, that they're going all out?
Iran is going all out because they have no other option. They're fighting with their backs
right
to the
now,
wall.
but Sandeep, that's right now. What about, let's say, a week from now? Will they still be in a position where they can go all out?
My sense is that the US and Israel is playing to try and exhaust Iran, get them to expend all of their missiles, their ballistic missiles, their drones, destroy their stockpiles, destroy their ability to launch missiles. Because right now, the only card that Iran has on its hands is the ability to inflict damage using their drones, using their ballistic missiles. Once that stops, Iran is helpless, it's defenseless. That's what this long game appears to be. The fact that they want to play this for the next 3-4 weeks in the hope that their air power will be able to overpower Iran's ability to launch all of these weapon systems. So it's essentially you're looking at a war of attrition in the short term, in the next couple of weeks. Who runs out of interceptors first? Will America and Israel run out of interceptor missiles first, or will the Iranians run out of ballistic missiles and cruise missiles and drones first?
Sumit, what do you think?
Well, I agree with a few of the points with this, Sandeep, but there are more possibilities that, yes, Americans and Israelis are not able to handle all these attacks which have been done by the Iranians. That is why we can say that they might extend these operations for the next 4 or 5 weeks. But are they able to handle all these attacks on their embassies, consulate for a longer period? The answer is definitely no. So we can say that yes, the only agenda of all these extended attacks is not only to exhaust their air power or their missile power or their drone power. This is also to get all those ground inputs from the Iran, just only to get where is the enriched uranium sites, where they have dispersed all these uranium which they are not able to track. So they are buying all these times for that particular reason also. And moreover, they are also getting the ground reports. Are they able to achieve what they have not able to achieve in last year in 2025? So these time is only tell them what exactly the next plan of action, then only they can proceed further for all these ground reports.
No, so the suggestion is, Geeta, there's been a lot of questions about this, about whether there's actually been a strategy for US. There's been talk about whether Iran has been underestimated by US and Israel in the manner in which they've gone all out. But the suggestion from Sumit is that they've got this planned, that this is very much in the plan, that this will go on for a few days and then they'll wrap it up. So are you saying maybe 4 or 5 days and then Iran will come to the talking table?
Well, I think what Sumit was trying to say is not that they had planned it for the next few days, but just that they will not be able to sustain it beyond the next few days. What we're looking at is the ticker that is running on our channel. The Chinese foreign minister has spoken to the Iranian foreign minister. That's an important piece. The Russians and the Chinese are an important piece. They might not join in militarily, but they have stakes. And the stakes are very, very high. So what happens now? That's going to be an important one and a very important piece, Akshita. Having said that, I agree with Sumit that there's a cost to pay. West Asia is burning. Does the Arab world have the stomach to endure a conflict? Iran has had that. Iran has been hardened. Iran knows how to live and survive with very little means. The Arab world has not had that. It's been known to be comfortable, prosperous, peaceful, a haven of sorts when it comes to... Not this. So right now, we are seeing the UK base, the American bases. We are also now looking at hits at, and precision strikes, by the way, at the American, no schools being hit over here, no civilian population. That is in Israel, of course, but that's part of Iranian strategy. But here in West Asia, embassies, bases, and the cost of war. Can they sustain? So I don't think it's just about military hardware, whether the two sides have and how long can they sustain. It's also about how long can they bear the cost, or economic cost of war.
Pranay, you want to make a point? Because I also want to highlight the cost of war. We'll come back to that, but go ahead.
But Akshita, I would want to take forward from the point Geeta made, and I would like to read from the Chinese Foreign Ministry statement, which has just come.
Let's put out that news break as well.
And in fact, the Chinese Foreign Minister spoke to the Iranian Foreign Minister, and China says that China supports Iran in safeguarding its sovereignty, security, territorial integrity, and national dignity, and support Iran in upholding its legitimate and lawful rights and interests. This opens up another dimension altogether. This will this will change the timeline.
Let's just add to that, the last paragraph where Wang Yi has said that they've urged US and Israel to immediately stop the war.
This is on the similar lines, because if you see the statement put out by the Sayyid Abbas Araghchi, Iranian foreign minister, that we are only defending our interest, and the onus lies for any truce, any ceasefire on America and Israel, because they initiated it. And as you spoke to Ban Cohen, he says, and if, since Sandeep mentioned about the lexicon, about the semantics, that they are saying that we will take it as long as it goes, because Israel has been preparing and waiting for this moment for years. They want to finish the agenda, and the agenda
But that's the question also, Pranay. See, for Israel, this is something that they wanted.
Yes.
Has US fallen essentially for a narrative created by Israel then?
Many people think that it is Israel which draw, they have drawn United States into this conflict, and this is for the second time. During the 12-day war, United States announced that we have bombed these nuclear facilities and this should be the end point, and let us go back to the business as usual, or rather, let's explore the diplomatic rules. But now, Israel again initiated it, and they have drawn United States into it, and they would want to finish, and they are not going to talk to, if you go by their statement, they are not going to deal with the same regime, because in any case, in any negotiation, say about like 2 weeks or another, if they have to deal with same Sayyid Abbas Arakchi or Masood Pezeshkian, then they will be protecting their interest about their missile facilities, their nuclear facility, enrichment facilities, and they do not want to go down the same road again.
But also, the other argument over here, Akshita, is this, and very quickly, maybe Sandeep would want to weigh in. If this regime goes, then it creates an argument that any country that they think is an existential threat, China, Russia, you're talking about dictatorships and
they
ones
can't afford to hit them.
I'm just saying, that's the argument.
They can't afford to hit those heads of state.
But
Well,
that's
it's
the
about having a
argument.
nuclear might. These
But
countries
who's
can't
deciding?
touch.
Who's deciding?
But that's the
That's the
argument.
law of the jungle now.
exactly.
That's what.
I
what
agree, nothing's
after
sacred
generation-
anymore.
Nothing's
Right? This is
sacred.
the new normal.
The rules-based order that
So
we
Russia
know
and China would say
post
the same thing.
1945 is over, and we have to thank the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney for saying that today in 2026, if you're not at the dining table, you're on the menu. Right?
Yes.
And that any state
And they are
can get
looking
eaten
at
up
that.
like
Russia and
This is
China
the
are
reality,
looking at
Raj.
that.
This is a jungle
This is
law. This is the law of the
existential
jungle.
threat to the bloc itself.
And Geeta, unfortunately, this is the era of war. This has turned into an era of war.
And that was a question I was asking earlier, whether the new normal is war now.
Yes.
You see conflicts, so multiple of them, some of them raging on for years. It's almost as
And
if
we should
this
also
is how,
call out the
this is acceptable
ineffectiveness.
now.
We should also call out the ineffectiveness of the world bodies. Where is UN? And so ineffective US has turned out into.
No, but come on, United Nations Security Council meeting was held, and the First Lady led the conversations there.
That's telling by itself about how much really these world bodies can do. There was a point Geeta made on cost of war. I just want to focus on that. Sandeep, if you'll come with me, we'll just put out the numbers on our screens right now of what exactly is the cost of war here. For US, it's about $779 million. This is for the initial 24-hour strikes alone. So overall, if you look at it, Sandeep, total cost of the entire Operation Epic Fury alone is $210 billion. Now, this is an estimate. This is so far.
Yes.
Right? As far as Israel is concerned, it's about $2.5 billion, and that's spent on the war till day 3, till yesterday.
Yes.
This is an expensive war for both sides as well.
It
You
is.
can talk about Iran running out, but for US, domestic pressures, can they afford to keep this up?
Well, just to go back into history very quickly, Akshita, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan cost the US $5 trillion. It cost them $5 trillion, $8 trillion if you add the cost of looking after veterans and all of that. So the US has been here before. This is like Groundhog Day. You're repeating the mistakes of the past. You're going into a war which you thought would be a quick win, but now you're slowly, you're experiencing mission creep, and the costs are going to pile up. Donald Trump is not going to be able to turn to the American people and say, I saved you so much money, I got you so many $1 billion in tariffs. How much did you spend in the war, and was it worth it? That destruction that's been inflicted across West Asia, that's going to take a lot of billions of dollars to repair.
And so, Sumit, is that something that's also being considered right now? If you can join me here, what exactly are we looking at as far as the costs are concerned for Iran? There's not much clarity at this point on exactly how much of a cost Iran is incurring. Yes, please. What exactly do you think is the impact of this war on Iran financially?
Well, Iran from very long period have been facing these sanctions. So they are already facing all these sanctions, but exactly all these equipment, all these drones or all these ballistic missiles have been indigenously developed by the Iranian side. So there will be a more impact on Iran because they have already facing all these sanctions. They have been facing a protest all across the country, but most important point is, are they able to stop all these processes? No, they are not going to stop all these processes because this is the only safeguard which they have in this region, and they will continue to manufacture and make all these weapons. But the main challenge for Israel and America is, are they only able to control or damage these equipment, but they are not able to control. They are not able to capture, because for that particular reason, they need to send their man on ground, and that can only possible if America and Israel going to go for a longer operation in Iran.
Is that possible, Pranay? Boots on ground? Trump didn't rule it out, by the way. He didn't rule it out.
Boots on ground will open up another dimension, Akshita. Boots on the ground has its own long-term commitments. It has its own cost. And if you see, it is like a very difficult situation for President Donald Trump because he's already started losing support among the MAGA, with whom he has campaigned and garnered their support by saying that I am the only US president which did not start a new war. I am the peacemaker, I am the deal maker, and I am against for the US soldier losing their life in another territory and safeguarding others' interests.
6 have fallen so far.
So 6 have fallen so far, and now if he keeps shifting the goalposts even at this crucial point of time where he's heading towards a crucial midterm election, this has its own political cost, and Donald Trump, if he cares about anything, it is about his own image and the political costs. So it has its own, challenges if US at all commits boots on ground, and if that happens, that can only happen in certain circumstances where they are fully sure that the region is safe for their soldiers to go in and carry out some limited task, or maybe, like as Sumit was mentioning, the extraction of the fissile material or the enriched uranium.
Okay.
But to stabilize Iran, to control Iran, I don't see a possibility for the United States to commit its troops.
Trump, in his last address, said, many is suggesting I'm getting bored of this war. He says, no, I'm not getting bored. I will never get bored, so I'll continue this conflict. But there is a conversation, Geeta, about the domestic compulsions also that perhaps could have led Trump to taking this particular decision.
Well, to go to war, I don't think domestically it would have been very popular. Because Americans do not like going to war.
The whole talk of a distraction tactic because of pressure on him domestically.
That's him himself.
Yeah.
He is distracting. Domestically, they would not have wanted a war. But the domestic situation is so bad that to distract his own people from the inflation that they're facing, the price rise, and Epstein files. A lot of the things that were happening on the domestic front were not in favor of Trump. So the argument many experts believe is that this is a distractionary tactic by the Trump administration, by President Trump himself. But the cost is very high. Yeah. There has to be something more than just calling it a distraction. That would be just simplifying it. There has to be more than this. The conversations that took place in Mar-a-Lago between Netanyahu and Trump are important. I wish I were a fly on the wall. I was not. So we do not know really what happened, but
whatever he said convinced Trump.
There was a lot of convincing, right? Yeah. Because he actually said a few things that were debunked by the foreign minister. He said that they are preparing missiles to hit America. That's beyond 2,000-kilometer range. Arakchi said we don't have any missile that is beyond. We have capped it at 2,000 kilometers precisely for this reason, because we do not want America to think that we can reach them. But should they attack us, we will reach them by reaching the US bases. So 2,000-kilometer cap means they've covered the whole of West Asia. That's good enough for them, right?
Yeah. There's a news break also coming in. We'll cut across to what's happening in the UAE, where there's confirmation that's coming from the administration that the air defenses have dealt with 186 ballistic missiles that were launched towards the country since the start of the Iranian attack, with 172 missiles destroyed. 13 of them fell into the sea. 1 ballistic missile fell in the country's territory. The UAE has in fact put out a statement where they say that we possess a sufficient strategic stockpile of ammunition that ensures the sustainability of operations to confront and counter aerial threats of all types for extended periods, and maintains combat readiness to protect the state's security and sovereignty. Sandeep, I'll bring you in on this, because one of the aspects of what we've seen in the course of this conflict is, for the first time ever, locations like Dubai and Abu Dhabi, which are, throbbing centers of activity, commercial activity, being hit in a war, in a conflict. And so there are so many questions arising here about how well equipped the UAE is to defend themselves in such a scenario, in such a case.
Well, Akshita, the UAE and the other sheikdoms in the neighborhood, the GCC countries, the 6 of them, they're heavily equipped with a lot of Patriot missiles. That's the primary surface-to-air missile system that's been sold to them by the United States. But here again, there is a cost asymmetry, and that's the kind of war that Iran has been waging, right? A Shahid drone, which Iran has produced in the tens of thousands, that costs about $50,000 to make. A single Patriot interceptor missile costs $1 million. That is the differential here, that you're firing off $1 million missiles to intercept a projectile that costs just $50,000 for the Iranians to make. And eventually, you will run out of interceptors. The Iranians have plenty of Shahids to keep firing and engaging your defenses, and that seems to be the strategy that Iran has adopted.
A low-flying aerial target.
Yes, and that has been the strategy all across, to fire off these low-cost missiles, to force you to expend your interceptor missiles. So it is a kind of a interceptor depletion strategy that Iran seems to be following in West Asia right now.
But optics-wise, it's grabbed headlines. The fact that you've seen a Dubai International Airport being hit, or some of the most iconic buildings of Dubai.
It's never happened, not even in the Gulf War of 1991, where Saddam Hussein targeted Saudi Arabia and Israel, but never the other Gulf monarchies. And this is the first time it's happening.
Yeah.
Dubai was built in the shadow of Iranian missiles. They built this fantastic Singapore of West Asia, but unfortunately, it just happens to be too close to comfort for the Iranian missiles. It's just about 100 kilometers from Iran.
I have a question for Sandeep. Sandeep or Pranay, the fact that they've in the press conference that was held only a while ago, they've spoken about missiles, but a lot of it also has to do with drones. So does the same technology, same everything apply for drones as well, or is it different? Is it more asymmetrical and therefore UAE still is vulnerable?
Well, it is a combination. I would, before I give it to Pranay, it's a combination of three projectiles that Iran has been able to master. I call it their their tactical triad, which is cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones. So what Iran has been doing is been firing three of them. They fire them in groups. There's usually, a flock of Shahids accompanied by a single ballistic missile and one cruise missile. What they're doing is probing the air defenses and forcing them to expend interceptor missiles.
Gita, any air defense system for that matter, it has a capacity to engage certain number of targets. And Iran, we have seen Iranian strategy during those 12-day war as well, and even this time, they overwhelm a system. And even if with the best of the efficiency, no air defense system is 100% foolproof. And that's why if you see the numbers, they have neutralized, they have engaged those targets, destroyed them, but certain projectiles have managed to enter their territory and they landed, they have hit the target. Yeah. And that's why we see those visuals. Often we see those visuals, they are the visuals of the targets which were engaged by the interceptor, be it missiles or with some engagement, and they neutralize and they fall as debris. And they cause those fires.
It's intercepted missile debris that's falling also in some cases. In all, I think those images is something that's one of the biggest takeaways of this conflict, unfortunately, that there's no city that's unbreachable per se. Many thought that would be Dubai, Abu Dhabi, because there's such commercial centers for the world. And yet, you've seen those very telling images. Let's get you a sense of what's really happening in the Middle East as well. In what many would suggest is at least some semblance of normalcy, you're seeing partial flight ops resuming. And we get you those details of how many stranded Indians have also been able now to finally head back home. Take a look at this report.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. The US and Israel conflict with Iran has created a hole in the sky. Hundreds of flights cancelled. Thousands of tourists stranded. The world's busiest airports bear a deserted look. It is considered one of the worst aviation disasters since the COVID pandemic. After the reports of explosions and drone strikes in Riyadh, several West Asia-bound flights made U-turn, mid-air and returned to India. In a bid to resume services, airlines are rerouting flights and avoiding conflict zones as safety concerns mounts.
Air India has suspended its operations for UAE, Qatar, Israel, Iran, and several of other destinations today. And this suspension of operations, flight operations, could further increase because of the airspace restrictions and the war escalations that's happening. But on the other side, you're also getting pictures from Delhi's IGI airport, where the families traveling to UK, Canada, Cyprus are saying that they're waiting out here for past 4-5 hours, and the flight has been delayed by 8 hours.
28 को हमारा वापसी था, लेकिन हम लोग अभी हम लोग का 4 दिन से हम लोग वहाँ रुके हुए थे. रियली एयर इंडिया को बहुत ही मैं ग्रेटफुल हूँ कि उन लोगों ने इतना अच्छा हम लोग को सपोर्ट किया और जैसे तैसे हम लोग को लेके आए वहाँ से. I didn't receive any notification till yet, so now I have to go back because I didn't receive any notification, anything.
Amid the missile alerts across UAE, the West Asian nation has authorized a small number of evacuation and repatriation flights from Dubai and Abu Dhabi. After the mild breather, Air India safely brought back 149 passengers from Dubai. Meanwhile, Indigo is operating 10 special relief flights from Saudi Arabia to India. As India is intensifying rescue operations, stranded tourists in Bahrain have urged government for help. The conflict between US, Israel and Iran has grounded an entire region. Families of Indians wait with bated breath for their loved ones to return. As the mild respite offers hope, but the crisis seems to be far from over. With Amit Bharadwaj, Bureau Report, India Today.
So it's day 4 of the conflict and lots has happened. While flight ops have partially resumed, there's still a whole lot of strikes and counter-strikes being reported. Let's get you all of those images of what's playing out in this conflict. Let's tell you about first the attack that's been reported on Iran's Natanz nuke site. Both sides are clearly on the offensive. The United Nations nuclear watchdog has said that Iran's Natanz nuclear enrichment site sustained some recent damage after a US-Israeli airstrike campaign, but no radiological consequences expected. Israel has hit Iranian command centers. The Israeli Defense Forces has attacked the Iranian leadership complex, which constitutes one of the regime's most important and central headquarters. Iran held a funeral procession for victims of the strike on a girls' school in Minab. Thousands of Iranians attended the funeral procession for over 160 Iranian schoolgirls who were killed in the US-Israel strikes. In a wave of strikes on key Hezbollah centers in Beirut, Israeli forces say that they've struck over 160 targets and hit communication components used by Hezbollah's intelligence. Saudi Arabia has expressed its rejection and condemnation of the Iranian attack that targeted the building of the United States Embassy, the capital city of Riyadh. An explosion was heard in Iran's Lavizan, a northeastern neighborhood of Tehran, where Iranian military facilities are located. Footage also that you see on your screens shows thick smoke rising from a building in the heart of the city. Iran's Red Crescent Society has said that the death toll has risen to 787 since the start of the US-Israeli attacks. The agency said in a statement that 1,039 attacks have been recorded, 504 sites have been hit. Now, visuals also show villages in a Cyprus village being completely emptied out after a drone strike on Britain's Royal Air Force base in Cyprus. Oman Air's flight from Muscat has landed in Delhi carrying Indians who travelled to Muscat from Dubai by road to take their flight for India.
Very safe. And all.
But the government has been amazing. Thank you very much.
And as per government sources, India has 25 days of crude oil and refined oil stocks, and the government is scouting for alternative sources for importing crude oil, LPG and LNG. So it's day 4 of the conflict, and we've shown you a sense of what's really happening right now in the Middle East. Unfortunately, there's no sense of the conflict really dying down, with Iran making it clear they're going to continue hitting every single US base that's within their reach, within their target zone. Israel has made it clear that their operation is ongoing, as you also heard from the voices that joined us here on the show. The Israeli Defense Force saying our mission is very clear, that every element, extremist element in Iran will also be removed, anything that poses an existential threat to Israel. So expect this conflict to rage on for the next few weeks. At least that's what US President Donald Trump says. But what exactly will that mean? What's the price of this war? And I'm talking now not about the financial cost of war, but the human cost of war as well.